we've got so much within us that just challenge yourself a little bit and find out, because you really are magnificent. That's the bottom line.
Welcome everybody to the JeffMara podcast. For those of you that are listening audio only, I just want to let you know that there is a YouTube video for this podcast, and that's also JeffMara podcast on YouTube. So if you want to see what's going on, then go to YouTube and check it out. Tonight's guest is Lynn Russell. After researching 2,500 cases of near-death experiences, Lynn shares the in-depth understandings she has gained in her book, The Wonder of You, What Near-Death Experience Tells Us About Yourself. And she does have edition 1 and edition 2, which we will find out more about later. Through her research, she has discovered deeply hidden messages about the world, life, and the past that we all travel. During her research, Lynn uncovered marvelous messages she wanted to share with others. Hopefully during our podcast, we were going to get some of those answers out of her today. So Lynn, thank you very, very much for coming on my show. I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to asking you questions.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love being here.
Oh, thank you. All right. So let's get right to it. Some of your big questions. Why are we here?
That's a big one.
Yes.
Do we want to start with the biggest one? I can answer it, but it's sort of really involved.
It's really involved. Okay. Well, let's go back then. How did you get into near-death experiences in the first place?
Well, basically because I was frightened of death. I was sure that when I found out that I was going to die one day, that was just horrible. And so I wanted to find out what death was all about. And we were raised in an atheist home. And so when I talked to my mom about what would happen, she said, nothing, you'll just disappear. And that was terrifying. That was absolutely terrifying. So that's what got me into spirituality. And that was about 8 or 9 then. And from my teen years on, I have studied all kinds of religions and spirituality and just everything I could get. If it was new and different, I wanted to know about it. And then I also had some spiritual experiences of my own that were pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so that's what brought it all together for me. And then I was also, when I retired, I was going to be a writer. Well, I am. But I had a completely different book that I had in mind. And, but I needed to do some research for it. So I went to NDERF to find out some answers for the book, which never got written, by the way. But I fell in love with, hey, here I am with all these answers to what happens after death. So I was on the chat line there, and Dr. Jeffrey Long, who owns the site, asked for someone to volunteer to do research. And I said, me. So that's how it got started.
Well, that's great. Do you personally practice any religion at this time?
No. I'm a Unitarian, but we don't have a Unitarian church or fellowship where I am. And Unitarians don't have a specific belief. They just, whatever the truth is, that it's a search for truth, whatever that might be.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. I'm in Texas now, but when I got out of college in my early 20s, I was way out working in Alabama. And, that's kind of the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, right?
Yes, it is. But
in this belt buckle, I happened to stumble across a Unitarian church. And I really enjoyed it.
Yes. It's very open-minded, and they have 7 principles, but basically there are 2. One is respect for everyone and all life everywhere, and the second one is search for truth, whatever that might be.
In your research, I would assume that you've come across people seeing most type of religions. And, like if you're a Christian, were they seeing Jesus? Were Muslims seeing Muhammad? Were Buddhists seeing Buddha? What did you find?
I think what I would say there is that There isn't a hard and fast rule. Generally, yes. Generally, when a person um, dies, they see what they expect to see. I think that's how I would put it. But I have also read of Jewish people who met Jesus.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good one.
And really strong Christians that came away saying that was nothing like what I was taught. And so it's and changing their faith and becoming Buddhist. Actually, a lot of them become Buddhist afterwards.
Interesting. I had read some other research before, and it was kind of along the lines that, each religion would see their religious prophet or master, and people who were spiritual and or atheists would just see like a spiritual being. Mm-hmm. Did you find that?
Yeah. They very often don't. Sometimes they meet. Sometimes atheists have an experience where they might meet a guide. Mm-hmm. They might meet their loved ones on the other side, mm-hmm. but they wouldn't have. Usually, they're shocked the instant they leave their body. They're going, "How did this happen? I still exist. How can this be?"
Right.
That kind of thinking. Yeah.
Can you tell us about some of the common things that you would hear from people that, across all walks of life?
Yes, there are things that happen to everyone. Mm-hmm. For example, and some of them most people know about, for example, communication through thought and being able to move from one place to another through thought as well. Just thinking about where you want to be and you're there. But the big ones are primarily getting all knowledge. Like no matter what question they ask, they are absolutely inundated with the complete answers to the point where there's literally nothing left to ask because everything, not only is that question answered, but everything that impinges on that question is also answered. So they come away with a great deal of knowledge.
Interesting. Are you finding that people are involved in soul groups and they meet their group of people that they keep reincarnating with?
Actually, I never ran across that.
Interesting.
Yes, well, wait a minute. They would say that they recognized people on the other side and knew that they had lives with that other soul. Mm-hmm. But I never had a deliberate soul group that like reincarnating together over and over and over again. That I didn't come across that. But by the way, one of the other things that people, and this will lead into why we're here, is one of the big ones that people come to is that they realize that everything is one. They feel that once they're out of their body, it's like they're connected to everything that ever is and ever was. They just feel this complete, total togetherness, like they belong and they are everything.
I think most people, they'll see the light or see a tunnel of light. Have you ever come across someone that saw the light and chose not to go in that direction?
No, I don't think so. I've had people who have seen the light and known that they have to come back because they're not finished yet. Mm-hmm. Is that the kind of thing you mean?
No, actually, yeah. I was actually decided I'm not going back to the light. And either they remained here like as a ghost or...
Yeah. No, actually what I've read is that they feel very drawn to the light. Now, sometimes they just see the light. It's like this huge, bright light that's sort of sitting up there far away. And they recognize that it's much more than just a light, that there's a person, that there's an intelligence, like a being within the light. And so not everyone goes to the light. Some people just see it. Other people will feel very, very drawn to the light and will find themselves eventually right inside the light sometimes.
Yeah, interesting. Have you come across a lot of people that didn't want to come back, even though they were kind of forced to come back?
Almost all of them.
All of them, huh?
It was a real, yeah. Nobody wants to come back here.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's so beautiful there. They're filled with love. There's so much joy and peace, and it's just, well, heaven. It's just a really beautiful experience, and they're so wrapped up with the beautiful experience that they don't want to come back. And some people have. I've even read some people saying that they had a temper tantrum and they were yelling and screaming.
Wow.
Not to come back. Yeah.
Yeah. In your research, if you don't mind me asking, how did you conduct your research? Were you interviewing people or reading other people's interviews?
Yeah. And mostly I was reading other people's reports. I did, and I was very fortunate that I did get to talk to a few people that had sent in their reports, but most of them, I just read their reports. And then what I would do, they would make the report, and then after the report, they had a huge questionnaire to answer. I mean, it was a lot of questions pertaining to what happened to them when they were there. For example, the tunnel, loved ones, the light, those kind of things. Whether they, how was their, did they see better, and all that kind of thing. And then I would take that questionnaire and break it all up into, like, so many people had this and so many people had that happen, and that's what I did. And then Dr. Long used that for his book, Evidence of the Afterlife, The Science of Near-Death Experiences. So my research was for that book.
Oh, great. When you mentioned in your book, what is life about? Why are we here? What are we supposed to be doing? Were those part of the questions on your questionnaire, or was those just kind of your own conclusions from what you read?
Okay, they were mostly conclusions that I came to because so many people would talk about the exact same thing. So
interesting.
To me, it meant that was real.
Right.
There was some that would be off a little bit different, but primarily it was because that's what the people reported. But you see, what I was saying before was that I spent a lifetime searching and learning about spirituality and different kinds of religions, so that when I did this research, everything just fell together for me, and I could see, oh yeah, that's why this and this and this and this. So that's why I wrote it, because I was just getting such beautiful experience and beautiful information back. So that's why I wrote it, to share that.
All right. Maybe we can jump to this. Won't be a big question. Some people believe in, like, the multiverse theory, and even physicists or cosmologists may believe that we have multiple universes. From reading and these conclusions, can you explain to us what is our reality?
Yes, I think I can. And that's what's so beautiful about this, is that our reality is source. We are the source having a life experience in this existence, and that's our reality. And how that's done is, and this comes from science, is consciousness, that we are consciousness. And that to me is so exciting and so, so beautiful, because it means that we are actually there. We've never left. We're still at the source right this very minute. And we get this feeling of being separate. But that's what it's all about. We're supposed to be separate so that we can get back to the source in our life experience. And so that's why we're here. We're here to give to the source, which is ourself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
In a roundabout way.
I think some people may believe that consciousness is actually not even part of our body. It's like our body is just here as, like a machine to kind of tune in our consciousness, but it's kind of maybe surrounds our body or distant from our body. Or do you have any explanation for that?
Well, actually, it's all. It's
Mm,
all of it.
mm,
It's the physical and the non-physical. It's the universe. Consciousness is literally everywhere because consciousness is source, and source is everywhere.
mm,
Panpsychism is what they call it, and so panpsychism is the consciousness everywhere, and so it's in the physical things like our bodies and our houses and whatever else and stones and beautiful streams and
mm.
it's in there too.
Oh,
But we
interesting.
feel it. We feel it when we go into nature. We feel closer, but it's in my cup.
Mm, mm,
There's nothing that doesn't have source within it because source is the creative energy
mm,
that creates that.
mm,
And another thing is that source is love. Um, and we've heard that for years, centuries we've been told God is love, God is love. Well, now we're finding out that it's really true that people who enter into the light are absolutely blown away by the love that they experience. And and so that is true. And then they find out that it is that love that is the power that is used to create with.
mm,
And so we are love power.
mm,
I love that. I think
mm.
that's wonderful.
Yeah. If you can remember and tell us, what is the most shocking report of an NDE that you ever read or came across? Is there something that just really like blew you away?
Yeah, I do actually. And I think it's in my book. I don't remember names, and I don't like to put names in books because it maybe, copyright stuff and all that.
Mm,
So, anyway, this was a sailor. He was a sailor at sea, and he was actually in the Navy. And he was doing deep sea diving with a bunch of other fellows. And he accidentally stepped on poison coral, and so
mm,
he got the poison coral embedded in his foot.
mm,
And so that his buddies got him back to the ship as soon as they saw that he was having problems. But it was too late, and he died on ship.
mm.
But before he died, the strangest thing was that the doctor on ship, the Navy doctor, had set him up with an EEG. So they put an EEG on him
Mm.
and on his head. And so, now why I don't know he did that. But
Yeah.
anyway, the doctor left. When he died, the doctor just left the EEG running and left the room and came back 29 hours later. That's when this fellow came back from death.
Wow.
29 hours,
29 hours.
and the EEG was still running.
Oh, wow.
So it was so there was absolute proof.
There wasn't anything that would say, okay, the poison did something that slowed his breathing down, or anything that that they or did they that he wasn't really dead, or they knew he was dead. I'm not saying it didn't happen. I just kind of playing the devil's advocate.
Yeah, and that's cool because I think that there's a lot of people who want to have like they it's so confusing. How can this possibly be? And so I can certainly understand. And the same with the fact that it's called near death experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the man who first wrote about it and started this whole thing was a doctor. He was Dr. Raymond Moody, and
Okay.
so he started this whole thing. But he was a doctor, and he didn't believe that the deaths were real. He thought they were, like you say, that there was your brain, or they were almost dead. They weren't
Mm-hmm.
really dead.
Right.
But since then, we found out that they really are dead,
Mm-hmm.
and so the brain has some activity that lasts at the brain stem
Mm-hmm.
for about a half hour or so, maybe a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's it. It dies. It quits at about 3/4 of an hour. That's it.
Mm.
There's literally nothing back there. So even if there's just nothing happening. So these people, some of these, I have quite a few of them actually, that were put in the morgue and pronounced dead. They're in the morgue. They're in the state of rigor mortis, and they come back.
Wow, that's interesting.
And they've been gone for 13, 14 hours.
Wow.
And they can't move. They're frozen. And they can't tell anybody that they're back because they can't move. But usually the attendant will notice them and do something. But so that cannot be the brain breaking down. It can't be the drugs. It can't be all the excuses. I really think we need way more study. We made decisions about what it is, closed the door and walked away, and we really need a lot more study.
I agree with you. I mean, I think that even, quote unquote modern science really can't do, they kind of define consciousness as just the state of being awake, but there's so much more to it that it's really kind of almost undefinable. And even the medications or the drugs that make you unconscious, they can kind of say, okay, well, this chemical enters your brain and you become unconscious, but there's no more in depth of saying, okay, well, what's actually going on in the mechanism.
And so you see, for the fact that the people that their bodies have gone into rigor mortis says that this cannot be, they were really dead. Their body wouldn't go into rigor mortis if they weren't really dead.
Right.
So, it's things like that. But there's other things. They were able to tell people what they were doing. They leave their body and they go and travel around and they can tell people what they've been doing because they can see us and they can hear us. They know even our thoughts. Right. And so they'll even tell people what they've thought about or what they've been doing and so on. But their bodies are back on a slab somewhere.
That's interesting. I've never heard that one. Let me catch a couple questions here. From anything you've learned and what you've concluded, is there a such thing as destiny? And if so, do you believe in it?
I'm not a fan of destiny. What happens is before we come here as a soul, we decide that we are going to accomplish a task or some kind of thing that we're going to do while we're here. And then we will decide on the elements of our lives, the future life, that will help us to get to that goal, whatever that goal happens to be. And so we'll decide the people in our lives. We will decide events that will happen in our lives. But we don't decide every single person we ever run across. And we don't decide every single event that ever happened in our lives.
Right.
And more than that, and we even decide how intelligent we're going to be, what country we're going to live in, what we're going to look like. All of those things are predestined. And so then we will have a life. But while we're here, because we are source, and we really need to keep that in mind, because we are source, we can control it. We can change it. And so we can decide not to do it in this lifetime. Now, we need to get that, whatever it is, done. So that means we have to come back for the next life and do it. We can't get out of it.
Right.
But so that's destiny. We really have 100% free will to change whatever we want.
Okay. Let me see this one. Have you come across anybody who said they go to hell? And so do you believe in heaven or hell, or is there just heaven?
Yeah. Well, yes, I have actually. Quite a few people that have had hellish or negative experiences. And so when they are in that hell experience, two things about that is that one, no two hell experiences are the same. Now, I said that about death experiences too, but there are elements within death experiences that are the same. But with hell experiences, they're completely different from each other. So that's one thing. But the other thing is that while the person is having that horrible experience,
Mm-hmm.
they will ask to be taken away. They'll say, "Get me out of here."
Mm-hmm.
or one fellow was an atheist, and there he is in hell, and he couldn't think of how was he going to get out of here? And so the only thing he could think of was, "Jesus loves me, yes, I know." That he learned when he was a kid. And so he started to sing that, and he was out.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the interesting points of that is that every single person that I have studied that was in hell got out. Every single one of them. They asked to be taken out, and they were immediately removed. That's point one. Every single one said, "Well, what was that all about? Like, how come I had that experience?" And they were all told that was them, that they had made that up, that was their creation.
So hell was their own creation. Interesting.
Yeah. So because we need to really keep in mind that we are source, and as source, we are creators. And as creators, we create the life we are presently having, and we create the world that we're in, and we create the death experience we have.
What do you think about people who are criminals, murderers, stuff like that? What do you think happens to them after they die?
Well, that's a hard one, because so many people want them to pay. You know, they were horrible and they did awful things and they hurt other people, so they should pay. But that doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way.
Right. What
happens is they have to experience, and I guess this would be the best example of hell. That is, they have a life review. And when they have their life review, they experience every single thing they have done as if it's themselves. So it's just a table that are turned completely, and they become the person that they have abused or hurt, and they feel exactly what that other person felt. Now, that goes both ways. So if you're kind and you're caring and you're loving, you experience that too. But there's no judgment, except that what we judge ourselves. We're the only ones who do any judging. We're not judged from outside. In fact, while we're going through the the life review, we feel all kinds of love and being poured towards us. You know, like it's really quite lovely. Yeah.
You know, I have another podcast that I did with a person, and we talked about his near-death experience, and I wish I remembered all the exact events. But the place he went to was kind of like an apocalyptic world, like a destroyed city. And I kind of just point blank asked him, "Do you feel like you were in hell?" And I think he said no. But he was there like learning stuff about himself, or kind of learning. And then when he was doing something mechanical, and then every time he would change something mechanically, he would perhaps learn something about himself. And eventually he got out and came back. But I would assume from all your research, anybody ended up in a place that's, you know, a blown up city is not the typical. And he, I think, acknowledged that as well. Is that's not your typical being in a place of love and light.
No, that's not a typical at all. Okay, let me explain. As I said before, we are the creators, and we create the experiences we have. So I've had one fellow who worked, a couple of 100 years while he was on the other side, right? He's only gone for like a half hour. When he's gone, he feels like he's been gone, and he had to build. I'm trying to think of what it was, but he had to build this something up a hill, and it took him 150 years to do it, or 200, something like that. Anyway, it was a huge, long thing. And I've had other ones who have talked about having lifetimes on the other side and come back, but those are exceptions. But that's what they created for themselves, because that's what they thought it should be.
Yeah, him and I both talked about that. It's interesting you bring that up, because I felt like, you know, when you're in that place, time doesn't exist anymore anyways. Time only exists here.
That's right. That's right.
And I almost thought before, if you want to reincarnate, imagine being in a place and you can just choose whatever time you want to incarnate. Well, okay, this life I'm going to pop in the 1700s, and then you're back, and okay, now I'm going to go into the 3000s, and you kind of, it's
I
non-linear.
think they probably could, but for us is that we're so wrapped up with time that it's illogical to us being able to do things like that. So how can we go to something that already happened, So I do agree, but I will talk to you about a woman. Her experience blew me away. She was in the tunnel on the way up to wherever, and or sideways maybe, I don't know. Anyway, she's in the tunnel and she's moving, and in her mind she says to herself, I'm just making this up. This isn't real.
Interesting.
And so she decided to think about somewhere else, and all of a sudden she became where she, like this other place that she thought up, she became there. She was there. There she was, right in the middle of this place. And it was as real as this is right now. And she kept thinking of different kind of places that to be, because she realized that she was the one who was making this up. And every time she went to it, it was as real as we feel this is right now.
What do you think about dreams?
Oh, dreaming.
Yes.
Oh, well, I've wondered about that myself, actually. I've sort of wondered. I have not got an answer for you from near-death experiences. I do wonder about it, because when we are dreaming, we're not aware of time. When we're asleep, we're not aware of time, So I do wonder whether we're connecting to the other side or not. But I haven't got that answer officially.
Okay, yeah. What do you think about people who are doing past life regression therapy?
Actually, I went through past life regression and came to 4 different lives, and they were very realistic while I was there. But when I came back, I wondered if I'd made it up.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So now, I don't know about regression, but I do know that we have many, many lives, many, many lives. So, so certainly reincarnation is real.
Have you ever figured out what is the point of reincarnating over and over again? Like, what's the point of everything?
Yeah. Well, now this is hard for most people to get. So this is getting into that deeper stuff.
Okay.
We are source. We literally are source.
We are separate source, or we are all the same source?
We are the light.
Okay.
When people have been, there's some people that have been over there like hours and hours, as I've said, and they go into the light and they become the light. And then they become one with the light, so that they are also creators.
Okay.
So we come here to give experiences to the light, which is ourself, okay? Because we are the light. So, but every life is the same life, because I am you and you are me, because we're from the same source. There is nothing else but one creator, one source, one spirit, actually. All right, there. Right. One spirit. There's only one spirit, and we are all it.
Right.
Okay? So every life that happens is ours.
Right.
So reincarnation, it might be this soul that is in this body that is going to have another existence, or it might be the light. And I'm relating to that other life so well because I'm part of that light.
Right. I generally agree with you, but then there's a question in my mind that I thought up is, with billions of people, at what point does Source say, okay, I've experienced everything?
Well, I don't know that we can. You see, there's more than just being on Earth.
Right.
So we can be every kind of bug or animal or that we want to on Earth, and there's bazillion of those. But we can also be on other planets too. So we can be life forms from anywhere in the universe. But there's probably, like you were talking a minute ago about multiverses, and there now what I understand that yes, there are more than one universe, and that I'm talking from from NDEers, that people with that death experiences do talk about multiverses, but I don't have a lot of information about it except what I've read with science, because I love science, so I do a lot of reading about it. But I don't know that I can talk about it from the near-death experience position.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that a physicist stated that it's possible that we all live in like the Matrix. There's no way to prove that we're not in that. Like simulations running over and over again. Have you seen the movie The Matrix?
I did actually, but I don't think that that's quite right. I mean, that and it's great imagination, and it does have some elements of it, that are probably because, and really this whole business of being consciousness, some people think that because this universe, science has shown that this universe is holographic. And so we are holographic. And the brain we think about or think with is holographic. And if that's the case, what does that make us? So that's when we get to the consciousness.
Right.
And and there's also been science experiments that have been done that show that we are consciousness. And one of them is, what is it? Global Consciousness Project. And what they did was they put a very super sensitive program into all kinds of computers all over the place. And it was tuned into the white noise within the atmosphere. And every time that there was a major event that happened in the world, it would show on the graph. And it showed that our consciousness somehow was connected to the universe. So that was one of the things. Right. And the other one was that before we even, and you may have heard this one, if something's going to happen, we get a message in our brain, seconds, like anywhere between 4 to 10 seconds before the experience, before it's even happened. We don't even know what we're going to react to, and we're getting messages into our brain, which shows, to me, that there's a direct link between us and source.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump over here. You have a first edition and a second edition of your book.
Right.
What is the difference between the first and the second edition?
Yeah, good question. My first book is primarily talking about what happens when you die, and just taking it step by step. Okay, and I also talk about the oneness through that book too. That's primarily a book on oneness. The second book is primarily talking about consciousness and using death experience and the material from that to show consciousness, that we are consciousness. So that's the difference.
So on the second book, have you just added extra chapters to the first edition?
Well, I zapped a few of my original chapters, but primarily, yes, that's what I've done. I've added more material.
Are you working on another book, or do you have any other projects that you're working on right now?
I have a third book that I've just finished, and it's being edited. So pretty soon I'll be looking for a publisher. And actually, I'm not worried about finding one because I've already had people that are interested. And so I'm looking for what it is primarily science, showing the spirituality of science. So it's going to be a spiritual science book, but it's mostly science. But it's easy, very, very, very. I write it to talk to the everyday person, not to other scientists, because I'm talking to seekers who want understanding. And so I don't want to make it heavy. So I break things down very basic language, so I'm not using big, heavy stuff.
When do you expect this book to be out?
Well, when I find a publisher, and as I say, I think it'll be pretty quick, then it takes about 1.5 years after that for a book to come out.
Wow.
So in 1.5 years.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it is. It's a long process. And the writer is sitting there going, waiting for it to happen.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I've also started, I've written my biography, my autobiography. So yeah, that's my other. I've got it 3/4. Yeah, 3/4 written.
What's the best way for people to find out about you and how to buy your book? And do you have a website?
I do. And so LynnKRussell.com. How about that?
All right.
So that's my website. I'm on Twitter.
Okay.
And I'm on Facebook. And I'm also on LinkedIn. And I do chats there, like, with people there too. So
are your books for sale on Amazon?
They're on Amazon, and they're also on pretty much any server, any warehouse or places that you get books. I'm trying to think of the right words, a provider or, server. So yeah, any place that sells books. And if it isn't in a store near you, you can order it.
Oh, that's great. All right. Well, before we wrap it up here, do you have any message that you have learned from your research that you can share with the audience?
Sure. Well, one of the things that I've learned is that we really are much more magnificent than we ever give ourselves credit for being, and that we have much more within ourselves that we can accomplish. We shortchange ourselves all the time. We say we can't, and we're frightened, and we let things talk us out of being able to accomplish. And we've got so much within us that just challenge yourself a little bit and find out, because you really are magnificent. That's the bottom line.
I like that. That was some good positive words for me for the day. All right, Lynn. Well, thank you so much for giving me some of your time this evening. I wish you massive success with your current books and your next book.
Thank you.
And I wish you the best.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So
and thank you for having me. This has been great.
Thank you so much, and have a great evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.